This is Dream Power Radio, the place where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Hello, and welcome to Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network powered by Raven International. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, the Dream Coach. This is a show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to make the internal shift to a life you love and rediscover the truth of who you really are. Many of us have had periods in our lives where we've struggled and have had to overcome obstacles thrown at us. These could have been obvious difficulties, like a job loss or a broken relationship that anyone could see and understand. There are also those hidden issues, like lack of self-esteem or questions about identity and purpose that are deeply felt, but invisible to those around us. What about those who have been dealt hardships at birth? How are they able to find purpose and passion in their lives? We're about to find out how one such person overcame her challenges and became an inspiration to many. Mandy B was born with cystic fibrosis and has gone on to become a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and a leadership coach. She's also the co-founder of Rayma Team, a woman-owned business that offers life and leadership coaching for women. Welcome to Dream Power Radio, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Debbie. I'm excited and honored to be here with you.
Well, I am so happy that you're joining us now. Mandy, I'll tell you, when we're kids, we all have dreams of what we want to do when we grow up. Mm-hmm. But you have had a life-threatening disease from birth. When did you first become aware that you had cystic fibrosis, and how did that affect your childhood and any dreams you might have had?
Well, first of all, I love this question, and I don't get asked very often about the dreams I had when I was a kid. Well, I was born with cystic fibrosis, and my parents found out that I was diagnosed with it when I was 6 months old. So I don't really have a moment in time where I lived a life and didn't have the awareness of it. As a kid, I was always told by my parents that I could do and be anything that I wanted as long as I stayed responsible and took care of myself. And so from a very young age, they instilled in me the ability to put together my own treatments for breathing medication, to, figure out how to take my own enzymes, because that's part of cystic fibrosis as well. So I think being a kid, I was always aware of the fact that I had CF. I'm also a dreamer myself. As a kid, I wanted to be a singer. And I worked really hard at crafting that. And part of the miracle of my story is that I can sing, even though I have a life-threatening lung disease. And so I was always that kid who was going around pretending I was doing concerts, singing everywhere I went, telling people to call me, Maid Marian or something like that. I had a very vivid imagination as a kid. So that's really what it was like for me as a kid. I think the biggest thing, though, when I was in fourth grade, I had another classmate, come up to me one day and tell me that I was going to die before I was 30 because she read in an encyclopedia that people with cystic fibrosis didn't make it into their 30s or even their 20s. So that was kind of the moment where I realized this disease is very serious. And I think that kind of just made me aware of the fact that I want to do everything I can as quickly as I can, just in case time ran out.
Did you ever have that feeling, because all kids, I think, naturally want to rebel. Did you ever have that feeling of, I don't need this medicine, or I'm not going to do this, or I just want to be like everybody else and do everything they're doing?
It's interesting because most kids with cystic fibrosis have that experience when they get to college. And that wasn't my experience. In fact, until my late 20s, I was the person that did everything by the book. I always did my medicine. My medical team would actually ask if I would be okay with other parents getting in touch with me because they wanted to see that it's possible to be healthy with this disease. And so I never went through that period at the same time as everybody else. What happened was in my late 20s, I started growing really weary of living with CF. And I also started growing really weary of being in other people's hopes and prayers, but my lung functions were going down instead of up. So my rebellion period happened when I was like 28. And I decided that I went to a prayer service. I was prayed for cystic fibrosis to be gone. And unlike any other prayer services, I decided this time I'm going to put my faith into action. And I flushed all my medication down the toilet. I do not recommend that, by the way, if you live with a life-threatening disease and you need the medication. But that put me into a 2-year experience of really figuring out what does it mean to be healthy with cystic fibrosis. And by the end of that, I ended up in hospital and almost died. And so what I've learned is sometimes a healing or a supernatural type of dream of being healed of a disease comes through a miracle that you can't explain, but a lot of times it comes through medicine. And so I'm thankful that I was able to get back to my health. I didn't need a lung transplant, which was a miracle in itself. And now I'm really thankful for the medicine because I have since gone on to run a half marathon, and I've really regained the lung functions that I had before I flushed my medication down the toilet.
So how are you feeling right now?
Good, really great. I'm on a new medication that came out a couple of years ago called Trikafta. And it's as close to a cure as they've been able to get yet with CF. So it's pretty exciting to be living in a world where that is happening in the CF community. And so, yes, I'm doing really well.
Oh, well, that's wonderful. But you said that you were a dreamer when you were a child. Like you dreamed, you wanted to be a singer, but did you have nighttime dreams that you recall?
I do. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I am a very literal prophetic type of dreamer where I have had dreams that will happen usually a couple months down the road, like 3 to 6 months. I have had a dream once where it happened literally the next day. So it's a weird thing. My best friend is the co-founder of my company, and we have conversations about dreams all the time.
It's very interesting you say that. On an upcoming show, I interviewed a dream expert who talks about precognitive dreams. And his theory is that really most of our dreams, if not all of our dreams, are precognitive, whether we know it or not. The problem with it is that when you have a dream, you don't know that it is until whatever it was you dreamt about happens. So
yes.
It's a little fun. Do you still remember your dreams now? So you talk about them with your friend all the time?
I do. I've gotten to the point where I think sometimes I wake up from a dream and I kind of know this is when I need to write down because something felt off. It felt like there was a message in the dream. And usually my dreams come in threes, where it's either 3 dreams with the same type of message or the same type of theme, or I go deeper and deeper into the same story 3 times. And then once the 3rd time comes around and I kind of get to the end of it, it kind of wraps itself up. So interestingly enough, I had some very prophetic type dreams while I wasn't taking my medicine. And it really had to do with what I was speaking over my life and what I was going to believe as far as the life that I was going to live.
So did these dreams help you realize that you maybe should be going back on your medicine?
Necessarily right away. I think there was an underlying theme of fear in them, but there was also a theme of making sure that I am speaking positively, but not necessarily for like positivity's sake, but just being very careful with my words and being very deliberate with the words that I was speaking over the situation. And, it's interesting because one of my respiratory therapists has told me in the past that they have never seen somebody get that sick with cystic fibrosis and survive, especially without a lung transplant, and be able to get their life back. And so I really think that a lot of the internal self-growth that I was doing and the diving into dream interpretations and really just digging deep, I really do think that was part of my process of making the decision that this wasn't where my story was going to end. Because I remember a day in the hospital where the first 4 days that I was in the hospital, and this was like a decade ago, I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize my own face. I looked like death. My skin was gray. My cheeks were sunken in. There was no spark to my eyes. And I looked like the face of a lot of my friends who have passed away with cystic fibrosis. And in that moment, I made a choice. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, Mandy, this is not how your story ends. No matter what your new normal is, you're going to make this count. And so I think that decision probably did come from being deliberate with my words and from those themes that were in my dreams.
That's so important. And it brings to mind to me something that is often I find it happens often, is that this sounds like this was your bottom. And a lot of times people have to hit bottom before they get to rise even higher than they were before. Would you say that's what happened to you? And do you think that people have to reach bottom in order to succeed?
I sometimes think that you do have to reach bottom. I think there are valuable lessons to learn at rock bottom that you cannot learn any other way. You can hear them. You can listen to other people who have hit rock bottom and learn lessons from them. But something happens when you experience it yourself. I think it produces in you a resilience to rise up and really go for it. I think it helps you get over your excuses as to why you haven't gone for something in the past. And so I really do think that you have to reach rock bottom. I know for me, health-wise, that definitely was my rock bottom. I've also hit rock bottom financially with my husband, and I were 6 figures in debt around the same time. We had also lost our home to an apartment fire around this, like a year before I was so sick. And so all of that was just like the perfect rock bottom season that just came to a head when my health was going downhill.
Yeah, so it was just a series of events.
It really was.
So a lot of times though, when people hit rock bottom, they stay there. So what was it in you that was able to get you to rise up and be who you are now?
Well, I think it was that because I'm a big dreamer and because those dreams hadn't happened yet. I remember about a few years before I was in the hospital fighting for my life, I remember laying on a massage table. And I consider myself a person of faith. I'm a Christian, and I have these conversations that I like to say are with God. And I remember having a conversation where I really felt like God was asking me, are you okay if your dreams don't happen until you're 40? And I remember just kind of thinking to myself, well, I guess so, because it means I get to live till I'm 40. And so in that moment, I mean, when I was in the hospital fighting for my life, I was 30. And I held on to that. And I thought, well, none of that stuff has happened yet. Like I haven't done any of the things that I've been working on doing over the last 2-3 years. So I don't know that I'm going to look like a healthy person when I do them, or if I'm going to look like a sick person with cystic fibrosis. But I don't care what I look like. I'm going to make this count, even if that means I have to have oxygen and all the things that I feared. And I think that's really what kind of helped me step back up out of rock bottom. And thankfully, a few years prior to that, I had started my own journey of personal growth and working with different coaches and really digging deep to challenge my own paradigms and figure out what it is I needed to do to succeed in life and go after the dreams I had. And so I think all of that together is what kind of helped me make it matter.
Well, this is just a fascinating story, but we have to take a short break now. We are speaking with inspirational speaker and author Mandy B. Anderson, and we'll be right back.
When is a car not a car? When it shows up in your dreams. Cars are one of the most common dream symbols. If you don't know why you're dreaming about cars or any image, it can leave you confused or scared. But that dream could be a solution to a pressing problem, or an insight into a solution that's been bugging you for years. Go to my website and sign up for a complimentary discovery session, and I'll help you understand why a dream is a terrible thing to waste.
Go to thedreamcoach.net for more information.
Welcome back to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Yes, welcome back to Dream Power Radio. I'm your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman, and we're speaking with Mandy B. Anderson about her life with dealing with cystic fibrosis and how she turned it into success. Well, Mandy, when I first thought about speaking with you, my mind went to Claire Wineland, I should say, the only public figure I know who had cystic fibrosis. And for those of you who aren't aware of her, Claire was a teen who talked openly about her disease on social media and how she dealt with it. She gained quite a following. Sadly, she died a few years ago while she was awaiting a lung transplant. But do you see any parallels between your life and how she lived hers?
I found Claire online as well around the time that I can't remember if it was right before I was in the hospital fighting for my life or right after. And she inspired me. I think one of the things that she said that challenged me was she was known to say that she wanted to live her life not in spite of cystic fibrosis, but because of it. And I think the only parallel that we have is that we were both TEDx speakers. We both want to use our story to impact others. But I used to think that I want to live my life to the fullest in spite of cystic fibrosis. And it has taken me a lot of counseling and a lot of work over the last few years to shift that paradigm, to see it as I want to do it because of cystic fibrosis. I think I was always that kid that wanted to prove that cystic fibrosis doesn't define me. And in doing that, I really kind of distanced myself from the community of CF people that I have the honor of living life with. And it made it hard for me to speak into their life because I was always just kind of not ignoring the fact that I have CF, but not making it a focal point as far as like really telling the story. I always think that for me, doing my medication is like brushing my teeth. I have to do it every single day. It's not that big of a deal. I've turned it into my personal growth time when I'm doing my breathing treatments. But I think living your life because of cystic fibrosis spins it differently. It makes you want to rise up and advocate for the same people in your community. And over the last couple of years, I've really worked to become that type of a person instead of the one who's always looking at it in spite of.
So would you say now that cystic fibrosis was a gift?
I do. I think one of the challenges I had during the time of my rebellion was how can I encourage people and inspire people when I don't want them to do the same thing I did because I knew that it was risky. And I think when you are living in denial of what cards you've been dealt in life, it does make it hard to speak into people's lives. You might still inspire people, but you're not able to tell the whole truth. You're not able to find all of the lessons in the story because you're still living it. And so definitely embracing all of that for me has helped me want to really encourage people and advocate for them and even advocate to let people know what this disease is really like.
Well, I could see that could be a very powerful thing for people who have the disease. But what can you say to people who don't have a disease, but still feel like they're struggling through life?
I wrote an entire book about that. My book, Dangerous Hope, really parallels telling my story of what it was like to go through all of that and wrestle with having hope and losing hope and what I learned from it. And I tell it from the metaphor of planting something meaningful in the soil of disappointment. And I think that's the part of my story that I think everybody can relate to. Everybody has experienced disappointment in some way. Some people experience disappointment and they start to say, I don't want to get my hopes up. I tried that. It's just not meant to be. Other people decide to rise up from their rock bottom. And a lot of times disappointment is our rock bottom, right? This huge disappointment of some way or some sort is our rock bottom. And what I really walk people through in my book is how to make sense of the cycle of dangerous hope, of getting your hopes up and then maybe falling into some false hope where you're not willing to look at the hard things because you just want to keep positively affirming everything without learning how to handle the hard emotions. And then you find yourself in that hope deferred feeling of disappointment and wondering if it is ever going to happen. And that's where we're supposed to learn the lesson. That's where we're supposed to ask some hard questions, maybe get some coaching or some therapy so that we can grow stronger because of it, not in spite of it.
Right. So it's not just a matter of saying, I hope things are going to work out. You really have to work at it in some way, either, by yourself, by getting deeply involved in yourself or getting somebody to help you to do it then.
Absolutely. And I think that's the part that people kind of want to gloss over. They want to hurry up and move on. But sometimes when we move on too quickly, we haven't processed the rich soil of learning that is going to help us actually become the people we need to be so we can handle what we're hoping for.
So where do you think people get stuck in that cycle of hope? Is it just when they don't work at it?
I think people get stuck mostly in the hope deferred. And honestly, it's between the false hope and the hope deferred, because sometimes people don't know that they are believing false hope, that they are hoping for something, but denying the lessons that they have to learn. And they kind of just keep going from false hope to hope deferred, from false hope to hope deferred. Dangerous hope is hope that takes action, which is what we have to do. And I think to tell ourselves that we are always going to be people who are taking action and never falling into false hope is a false hope of its own, because we fall into false hope thinking we don't have to work so hard just easily. We forget that that is part of the process. Like, it's not something to get upset about. It's not something to beat yourself up about. It's part of the process. So the moment that we realize that, hey, we've been thinking that maybe we don't have to work so hard because we forgot the process of reaping and sowing. So now it's time to look at these hard things and recognize where we're at in the cycle. If we find ourselves in hope deferred, ask ourselves some very strategic questions so that we can process things. And then we grow stronger and move forward back into taking hope again, or taking action in dangerous hope again.
Yeah, I think this is such a important message, that I want to really emphasize it. The whole idea of taking action, because so many times when we're in a bad situation and maybe we feel that hope, we just think, oh, it will pass, or something will happen. Something will happen to us, not that we will be the catalyst for making something happen. And I see so many people falling into that trap. But it's even the same thing when we talk about dreaming. When I help people understand their dreams, and I tell them, your dream is just a nice, interesting story unless you take action on what it's teaching you. And I just think that's such a strong thing so I'm just emphasizing it again.
Yes. And I think, when I flushed my medication down the toilet, that was my first dangerous hope moment. I took action. Was it smart action? No. But sometimes the action we take isn't the wisest choice, but it is the thing that's going to put us on a path to grow. And I think we need to realize that, don't beat yourself up for making mistakes. You took action. You made the best decision based on what you were hoping for, based on what information you had in front of you, and you went for it. And that's the beautiful thing about life, is most of the time when we make a mistake, we get the opportunity to learn and change direction.
Right. And the other part about that is that when you do make a mistake, you get up and you can try again. It's when people make that mistake and say, oh, I made a mistake, that's it, I'm done for. And that's when they stay stuck in wherever they
Absolutely.
are stuck. Yeah. Let's turn that around, though. Let's talk about success. What do you see as the main characteristics of people who achieve success?
That is such a great question. I think that success really comes down to being able to cultivate your resilience so that you always get back up every time you make a mistake or every time you get knocked down. I think you have to be authentic. I think you have to have the attitude of saying yes to new possibilities. I think you have to learn how to be self-motivated and disciplined at the same time. And you've got to learn how to be assertive enough to go after what you want to, but in an honorable way, not in a way that is prideful and conceited, but in a way that is confident and bold. And I think those really are the characteristics that lead to success. And interestingly enough, if you take all of those characteristics and spell them out, it spells Rhema, which is what we named our company after, Rhema Team. It's the bestie couple name from my best friend and I, but ultimately we wanted it to stand for something. And standing for the skills and the qualities that lead to success, I think, is important, especially for women, because a lot of times people think that success is monetary value. And I don't think that's it. I mean, look at my life with cystic fibrosis. I'm healthy. I'm able to go after my dreams. That in itself is a form of success. And so getting ourselves to realize that success does not just mean making a lot of money. We've got to be willing to define success for ourselves and cultivate the characteristics that are going to help us get to that dream.
So, yeah, I just wanted to talk a bit about Rhema. So you help women in particular, with cultivate their leadership skills?
Yes, we actually have some leadership programs that are coming up next year. We do some women's events, and then we do private coaching as well. And we've worked with different companies to help their leadership team. And we work with some men every now and then as well, but the majority of our focus and our heart is for raising up women of all walks of life to be extraordinary leaders.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. You have a podcast called She Who Overcomes. And one of the questions that I know you like to ask your guests is, what is their favorite pair of shoes? So now it's my turn. What's your favorite pair of shoes?
So we often ask, if you were a shoe, what would you be and why? And it's kind of a personality trait, but a fun twist on it. And people love to talk about the shoe they would be and what story it tells. So I always pick a stiletto because I feel like I'm on my A game. It helps me kind of get into that mindset of being my best. And I kind of changed my mind on different colors, but I got this pair of Steve Madden stilettos for when I spoke at TEDx Bismarck this year, and they're phenomenal. They are white, but they have words all over them. And I'm a big word person. I love to have affirmations or true statements all over the place because I like to remind myself of saying them. And so these shoes have words like flawless, like boss babe or something on them. I don't know. It has the whole like branding story of Steve Madden's shoes on there too. And so they have pops of red and black all over them. And they're really my, at the moment, favorite pair of shoes.
Well, I congratulate you for being young enough to still be able to wear stiletto heels.
I have to tell you though, Debbie, I turned 40 in December and I am getting to the age where I can wear them for less hours. So about 4 hours is all I can handle now. So I have now become the type of woman who has to bring 2 pairs of shoes for a speaking engagement, walking shoes and stage shoes.
Yeah, I'm afraid my stiletto days are over. And if you were going to ask me that question, I'd probably say running shoes because they're flat and they're comfortable and they take me places and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
We are just reaching the end, and I have time for just one question, which is, how can people find out about you and your services?
Absolutely. So the best place to find me is at raymateam.com. That's RAYMATEAM.com. And from there, you'll be able to find our social media. If you want to follow me on Instagram, that is my favorite social media site. It is Ms. Mandy B. Anderson. That's MSMandyBanderson.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you, Mandy, for being on Dream Power Radio today.
Thank you so much, Debbie. This was a wonderful conversation, and you're a delight to be interviewed by.
Oh, thank you. We've been speaking with inspirational speaker, author, and entrepreneur Mandy B. Anderson. I hope you've enjoyed today's program. If you have, please tell all your friends, follow me, and drop a positive review on your podcast site. Until next time, this is Debbie Spector-Weissman saying, sweet dreams, everybody.
You've been listening to Dream Power Radio with your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman. For more information on Debbie or to sign up for her newsletter, go to dreampowerradio.com. This has been Dream Power Radio on the amazing Women and Men of Power Network, the world's leading positive programming network, powered by Raven International.